Welcome to Business Talk, Sister Talk. I'm Bekkah, and today's podcast episode topic is business advice I wish I had a mentor tell me. And this episode series is probably going to be a bit long, so buckle up. And if you are a seasoned entrepreneur, great. I would love to hear all of the things that you wish a mentor told you at the beginning. These are some things that I've been kind of putting together in like short little snippets, and there's probably so much more detail I could go into on each one of all the pros and cons or whatever, and these are just things that I learned for myself that were valuable to me, so I hope they'll be valuable to you. And because I'm trying to be better at this, I'm just going to say this is for educational purposes. I don't know your specific situation, and if you make decisions based on this information, you should also talk to professionals who know you and your market. Anyways, here we go. So the first thing I wish someone would have told me at the beginning was data should be weighted into your business decisions. You should really use data to understand, is this a good path forward? What does it look like if you're spending money on this? Is it making sense for your return on investment? Use data, use numbers of like your market, all that kind of stuff if you can. Identify your NDAs codes, because you can actually start looking on different services using the library, actually, a lot of major cities. And if you're in a small community and you're in a library system network, they may have data research subscriptions that you don't have to pay for business and other things. And you can utilize your library to access that data and those subscriptions for free to start getting information about your specific industry, and your NDAs codes in that will allow you to dig into detail on what's the average price point for selling things, or like the size of the business, how many are there, that kind of stuff. It's really helpful to know what's going on in your industry or what things are changing, any kind of publications that'll help you with that. So data should be weighted in your business decisions. But here's the next part to that. There is more to you than your business, and your family needs to come first. Your health needs to come first. And I would say that I've realized over time that business isn't the most important thing in life, and it should never be for anybody, because at the end of the day, if all you do is build a really successful business and all of that falls apart because of your health or because something else happens in your life, like a death of a loved one, you realize it was such a waste of your time, because you can never get those things back. And I think that that is something that, to me, is more valuable than selling yourself for the dollar. And anyways, I would say that that's important. And if you feel morally convicted that your customer is not maximizing the value that you're attempting to provide, I've learned it's better to be honest and have that conversation regarding your concerns and offer to end services rather than keep that person and pull in more money, because your relationship of trust will be better, your referrals will be better, and they're not going to feel like they don't have a way out or that you provided them poor quality service. I come back to that time and time again with people, because when I see a customer is too busy for my services, if you have a service-based business or if you have like a subscription that you're selling or whatever, and they're just not spending the time to make what they're investing in valuable, it's better to keep that relationship and have them circle back to you when they are going to take it seriously than to just continue to pull in revenue from that relationship, because it will end up making a lot more complaints in the end. And I've just seen this for myself, like really, really valuable in my relationships with people. And so I'm just giving you that advice because I think it's something that I wish I would have known earlier. And also something that I wish I would have been told by a mentor: you are valuable and the things that you're offering are fantastic, but this person just does not have time for you. And you don't need to have anxiety about that. And it's okay to say, hey, like, we should revisit this in the future when you do have more time, because I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't think that I can really meet your needs in the current situation that's going on. And I would like you to get the most value and maximize at least what you've learned so far. And if you are ready to come back to this conversation at a later date, that would be fantastic. But I understand that maybe your life is just not in a place where you can maximize what I have to offer. And I would say I've been a little bit terrified sometimes to have that conversation with people, because especially if they're like maybe one of your first clients or whatever that you just got and you're trying to do everything to make them happy. But if they honestly are just not taking the time to find the value or see the value, it doesn't matter how hard you work to make them happy, they're not going to be able to get there. And just be good to yourself and recognize that it's not you, and be okay with breaking up with people. It's going to save you so much heartache, I promise. Okay, so then the next one I have learned: always meet in public places with potential clients you don't know. Have other witnesses present, or if you have a storefront, get security cameras for your place of business. I have seen a lot more entrepreneurs in modern day, honestly, especially in big cities, where if you're the only person there, you have a locked door policy and people don't come through the door unless you let them in. And I have had to do a lot of things differently, just in terms of being a woman by myself and saying, oh, we're only open for appointment only today. And even if you're a couple ladies by yourselves, it's important to think through your safety concerns of where you live and what's going on in your community. And I say that too, with being strategic about letting people know where you're going, when your meeting is, what time you're planning to be done. I didn't realize that was so important until later on in my career. And now I try to do that regularly. I have multiple people in my life that have access to my Google Calendar, and I try to put everything in there that has the address, has who I'm meeting with, and that information, so that if ever something happens, people kind of can track where exactly I am, or you share your location with people if you have like Find My on your iPhone or whatever. Those are just simple safety things that I never realized would be important, and I wish a mentor would have really hammered those into me at the beginning, because I know that now with technology and everything, people are starting to see this a little bit more with, like, if you have kids, you're trying to protect your kids from social media and all this kind of stuff. But at the beginning too, protect yourself and think about what you're sharing and why you're sharing it for your brand, but don't make it everything about your life and where you are. I always tell people, schedule your content. I have a lot of content that I pre-schedule because I think it's important to make sure that not everyone is getting an exact play-by-play of where you are and what's going on in your life. Because I've learned the hard way that it's important to do those things. As a foster parent, I would say in the past, like even having a business and people figuring out what my phone number is because it's my business phone number or whatever, that has been an interesting journey too. So I'm just saying that when you decide to help other people and you get into people's lives that can be messy, you're going to have additional things you need to think about for your own safety. So I know that that's a weird thing to say, but as a mentor, I wish somebody would have just talked me through that a little bit more. And Google Voice is a fantastic number you can get. It's a free phone number, and you can use that for your business, and you can actually forward that phone number to your personal number. So there's lots of ways to do that. You can have a free one. You can use WhatsApp if you want. I mean, there's lots of ways now with technology, and that's why I have those actually on my tools and tips page on my website, because I think it's important for people to realize they don't have to spend a bunch of money to start a business, and they also can do things to make sure that in the future they can be strategic in how they grow. And I think that that's really important to think about. So the next thing I would say is that I wish somebody would have told me this at the beginning. I don't know why I didn't figure this out, but you can get checks by using an ordering check website, and you don't have to get them through your bank. Like, I know a lot of times if you're meeting with a new client or whatever, you have a job, or what does that look like? I don't really know for you, but if you need to do an ACH payment and they say we need you to attach a voided check, you have to get those checks. If you get them from your bank, they're like $1 each. Or like if you get a whole pack of them, I mean, they might be a little cheaper, but it's just not a good price to order them from your bank. Do it from an independent company. And then also, you should be getting a bank that has online bill pay, because you can set up all of your vendors in there if you need to pay by check, and you can get the bank to cut the checks for you and mail them. So you're also not paying for the check or the stamp when it goes to the people that you're paying. So man, use online bill pay if you are not already. I save so much money on stamps by doing that, as well as like getting more checks and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just saying, I wish somebody would have told me that at the beginning. That would have been so much more convenient. And honestly, it was probably not until my 5th year of business that I even ordered a checkbook, because I was that cheap. And then I was like, oh man, this is kind of expensive even in that. I think it was like $30 for a bunch of checks. So anyways, just telling you, don't go through your bank. Look around, do some shopping if you absolutely need them. Okay, so the next one, batch pay from your website if you do online sales, weekly rather than daily or per transaction if you are hitting a per transaction threshold with your bank. Because there's a lot of like free checking accounts for business that have like transaction limits. And so definitely try to use something that doesn't have fees. You should not be paying a fee to have a business bank account. I don't care who you are. Like, that's just, no, don't do it, because that's just an additional cost for no reason. So always shop for a bank with a free business checking account with a minimum balance requirement, or some sort of transaction flow threshold that they start charging you like a 10-cent transaction fee on, and then just stay below that. If you have it, I think Wells Fargo's in the past was like 100 transactions in 1 month. And if you get all of your stuff through like a Square payment processor or Venmo or whatever you're doing, like, I don't know who uses Venmo, but just saying, just batch those so that you're not getting all of the transactions individually, and then you won't ever go over that threshold for the most part, unless you're making like a couple million. At that point, you probably should maybe think about paying the fee. Okay, so the next thing I would say is there are a lot of online bank accounts like QuickBooks and Square, but dude, check the interest rates and local programs before deciding to use their financing options, because QuickBooks and Square specifically, they make taking out a loan like one click. And I mean, because they know your income, they're looking at your revenue. I would just be very wary about doing that without first checking out what your local economic development authority has available, or your county, because those interest rates can be killer. And I know sometimes it's like, well, it's prime plus whatever, but just shop around and check that out, because even in our teeny little town, less than 5,000 people here, it's like you can get a loan for $50,000 through the EDA program on a 3% interest rate. And I mean, like, if you look at the inflation rate, that's just basically almost the rate of inflation. So if you need capital, understand your local programming before going out and just clicking a button to get pre-approved financing. I just really want to reiterate that. Now, personally, I'm not a huge fan of loans unless it's like a forgivable loan or it's tied to some sort of additional grant. But that's me, because I'm cheap, and also because I want to make sure that I never put myself in a position where I need to be dependent on my body to produce to make an income. And maybe I should talk a little bit about that, but basically what I mean is that if you know, like, you're somebody who maybe has a disability, or maybe knows that if you push yourself too hard, you will break as a human. Don't ever put yourself in a situation where if you came into a financial hardship with your business, it would cost you everything. I think that and I would say that goes true with your health. Like, don't ever put yourself in a position with your business that it's going to cost you your health either, because honestly, I've done that and it's not worth it. It's really not. Like, point number one that I made. Wish a business mentor would have told me that. Okay, the next thing, NDAs. You should know what these are and write them up. So non-disclosure agreements, NDA is short for non-disclosure agreement. And what that means is when you're going to have a conversation with somebody, if you're doing consulting of any sort, and even if it's like an first intro conversation and they want to tell you some information, I would say write up an NDA, get them to sign that. And if you are in an industry like real estate and you're a real estate person, you have to disclose, hey, like if you tell me something about your property or whatever, and I have a buyer that wants to buy your property, I have to tell them unless you're my client. Like, that's just the way it is. I have to give them the honest truth about what you said unless you're my client. And so I think it's important to recognize when to disclose information about who you have to report to about the things that you're doing. There's a lot of people that say, hey, I'm a mandated reporter. So if you tell me something that you did that was wrong to somebody, I'm going to have to tell. Like, so that kind of stuff is important to disclose to people. And it's also important to know when to not disclose information to people. So kind of look at that. If you're looking at any kind of consulting business, know you should have one of those drafted. And for some of you that aren't familiar with mandated reporters, that's more for child protection services, like a social worker or a person that works at a school would have to take those classes and be mandated to report things. I'm just giving that as an example because I think it's important to know that there may be stuff involved with your job, maybe like if you have a business as a therapist or whatever, that you have to make sure that you are ethically following the rules of the practice that you have. Okay, so then the next thing I would talk about is in commercial property. I cannot say this enough, by the way. I recently went to real estate classes because I decided that I wanted to get my real estate license to just level up my skills and keep learning. And by the way, I think I have to disclose that now that I'm with EXP as my broker, just in case you're wondering, it's a digital brokerage. But essentially, commercial property sellers are not required to make any sort of disclosures. Did you know that? Like, in the regular market, when you say, oh, well, we have basement leaking, the roof has leaked one time, but we got it repaired, all that kind of stuff, commercial properties do not have to do that by law. I mean, there may be some kind of mandates within like the city. I know some cities it's like, well, you have to get a sewer lateral inspection and all that kind of stuff to make sure it's good to go before you sell the property for any kind of property. But I'm talking like commercial property, for the most part, disclosures are not required because they figure if you're buying a commercial building, you know what you're doing and you're taking on that risk. And the person selling it to you is not liable for not telling you. Like, so really kind of take that into consideration when you're looking at commercial property, which you may want to be doing right now because especially if you're in manufacturing, there's some really cool things happening with how you should really be strategizing your taxes. And if you ever want to talk about that, let me know because that's what's going on in the world today. But anyways, other advice that I wish I would have had is if you are an LLC and you are netting now around $40,000, I would say that's the time to start thinking about going S-Corp. And that's because of the additional 15% on income taxes you would be paying on that money. There's lots of reasons why people shouldn't. Like if you own property, you shouldn't think about transitioning that into an S-Corp because it just doesn't really make sense for the tax advantage and all that. I am not a CPA, though I have considered going to get that licensing. But don't sue me. I'm just saying talk to your accountant because I think it's important to understand your options. And what I have realized is that many accountants do not do the work to strategize your taxes quarterly. And I think that if you're coming into your accountant's office at the end of the year and saying, what should I spend a bunch of money on to not pay taxes? Like, that's just not strategy. That's like asking, what should I clean before somebody comes over and you're missing a front door and you also have no running water because you just haven't kept up on your bills. Like, just really think about strategizing your taxes. Like, that to me is something that you should be considering. And also, that is totally something that I wish a mentor would have sat down with me on and said, hey, this is how you should leverage things to grow your business and also diversify your risk into other industries and look at real estate or look at your investments, all that kind of stuff. Like, I wish I would have had somebody when I was younger that sat me down and said, think about these things because you're not going to have time to learn them later, and you have all this time and your time is cheap. So learn while you have inexpensive time. Okay, so with that being said, a good accountant does pay for themselves. You should never be too cheap to not have a good accountant. And I'm trying to be honest with you. I would say from a mentor perspective, if you came to me and said, I'm doing my own taxes, I mean, I used to do my own taxes. Great. I'm glad if you enjoy it. That's awesome. I love taxes. But you should have another person looking at your stuff because, quite honestly, even if you use TurboTax or something else, which is probably only TurboTax because TurboTax keeps buying everyone else out and doesn't want any other players in the industry. But with that being said, like, really think about, are you actually paying for tax advice? Are they helping you strategize? Or are you just contacting them because they have so many software bugs that you can't get it to calculate right because it's actually a technical IT issue and all you're doing is talking to these paid on-call advisors to file IT complaints, which you have no access to do. I digress, but I'm just saying. Okay, so here's the next thing I would say, and don't hate me, please, if you use TurboTax. I'm not a complete hater. Like, I've used it before. Okay, so then the last thing I should say is, if you see an opportunity to go to an entrepreneurship event, do it. And don't always just focus on talking to the people with the booths and the sponsors. Like, the most valuable people at an entrepreneurship event is going to be other entrepreneurs. I'm not kidding you, because the amount of times I go to events and the only people that show up are people who are hoping to start a business, but they haven't started one yet, or the funders of the event that are going to try to give you a business loan or whatever. Like, yeah, those, I'm so glad they're putting on these events, and I think it's a great opportunity for them. But like, at the same time, the people who have the most knowledge are going to be other business owners. And I know that that seems kind of weird, but like, somebody who's running a nonprofit has different problems than somebody who's running a business. And I'm not saying that those issues are invalid. I'm just saying they are different, and they're not going to understand the same struggle pain points that you do because they're not going after the same dollars in the marketplace. Okay, for the gawk portion of this episode, and just so you know, stick around to the next one because we're going to keep doing the advice I wish I had a mentor telling me. But okay, this is a story about how I am too focused on, wait for it, marketing. Because my husband got this gift from one of our friends that was soap. And I had gotten some soap for my birthday, which was fantastic. But when we were talking about it, she was making them and selling them and all this stuff. I said, well, why don't you want to do like a special order or do online sales or whatever? And she's like, yeah, I would like to try that. I was like, well, why don't we just do a test order? And so, by the way, this is going to come out for the scent. So if you're on Instagram, whatever, vote on the scent that you want us to make. But my husband got his own bar of soap from this lady as a gift, and he was so excited about it, brought it home, and I saw him taking it out of the package. I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, this is my gift. And I'm like, no, I need to take video footage of that and use it for the advertising of what scent we should create. You're not allowed to use that bar soap. And so that was a gawk from my husband, because I asked him, what should I talk about? And he's like, you should talk about this because it's annoying. But okay, I took the video, it's scheduled out, and so vote on it, and now he gets to have his very own soap, and I'm not going to take it anymore. But it is good soap. I'm just going to say that. If you enjoyed this episode, you should give it a review wherever you are listening, and I will see you next time.